She could afford to buy the legacy of French queens and Russian grand duchesses. She married 7 times, to princes, counts, and Hollywood legends. Yet when the Woolworth heiress Barbara Hutton died in a hotel suite in 1979, only $3,500 remained in her bank account, and just 10 people attended her funeral. Today, we will open the jewel box of a woman whose life became one of the most beautiful and most merciless golden cages of the 20th century, and follow how some of the world's greatest treasures bore witness to both her dazzling triumphs and her profound solitude. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. When we look at the black and white newsreels of the 1930s, the lives of American heiresses often seem entirely woven from silk and champagne. The reality behind those polished society pages was frequently much darker. At just 4 years old, Barbara Hutton walked into a suite at the Plaza Hotel in New York and discovered her mother, Edna, lifeless. Edna was the daughter of Frank Winfield Woolworth, the magnate behind America's five-and-dime retail empire. After her mother's sudden death, Barbara's father, the stockbroker Franklin Laws Hutton, remained distant, and the girl was passed between relatives and a rotating cast of governesses, moving from one vast, quiet house to another. She inherited a fortune that would eventually grow to $42 million by the time she turned 21. To put that into perspective, it was an astronomical sum during an era when much of the country was facing severe economic collapse. Her father often treated their relationship as a series of financial arrangements. In the summer of 1929, he wanted Barbara to accompany him to Europe. She refused, so he took her to Cartier to win her over. 2 caskets, each containing 50 ruby rings, were placed in front of her. Her father promised to buy her whichever ring she preferred, expecting to spend around $5,000. Barbara examined the stones and calmly pointed to a single ring. The Cartier salesman beamed. She had selected the most expensive ruby in the vault, priced at $50,000. Her father's only consolation was the realization that his teenage daughter possessed a flawless eye for exceptional gems. That moment captured the logic of her life. Jewelry would replace what money could not fix. This divide between her reality and the outside world became glaringly public a year later, in November 1930. To mark her 18th birthday and her official entry into society, a debutante ball was organized at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in New York. The Great Depression was actively ravaging the nation, yet the event cost a reported $60,000. The ballroom was transformed into a winter wonderland, with $50,000 spent on the floral arrangements alone. Inside, 4 orchestras played through the night, and 2,000 bottles of champagne were served. The most astonishing detail of the night came near the end. As party favors, the guests were handed small jewelry cases. Inside, they found unmounted diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires. Handing out loose precious stones to society friends, while the rest of the country stood in breadlines, sparked immediate and intense public backlash. The press quickly fastened onto her, cementing her reputation under the moniker, the poor little rich girl. Despite the harsh glare of public scrutiny, Barbara was beginning to curate an incredibly sophisticated collection. Her early acquisitions showed a distinct preference for bold colors and historical provenance. A key piece is a major ruby and diamond necklace, originally crafted by the French house Chaumet in the 1910s. Some accounts suggest this piece previously belonged to Queen Amélie of Portugal. While there is no definitive written inventory to confirm that royal provenance, the high quality of the red stones and the delicate garland style of the setting clearly appealed to Barbara's developing tastes. She wore the Chaumet necklace frequently throughout the 1930s, often pairing it with her latest couture gowns. However, she rarely kept pieces in their original antique settings if they no longer suited her evolving aesthetic. By 1940, she decided the delicate garland design felt outdated. She entrusted the stones to Louis Arpels, requesting that the rubies be entirely reset into a new yellow-gold mounting. The Van Cleef and Arpels American Workshop dismantled the piece and created a bold choker featuring an Egyptian-inspired design of palmette and lotus flowers. Crucially, the Maison engineered this new piece to be convertible. Photographs from the following decades show Barbara wearing the heavy ruby lotus motifs not only around her neck, but also mounted on a frame as a tiara. She retained this transformable piece for the rest of her life, even commissioning Van Cleef and Arpels to add a new ruby and diamond element to it in 1976. This specific lotus necklace would remain constantly by her side, and it will actually reappear later in our story, worn in a rather unexpected setting during her later years in Paris. By 1933, Barbara had come into her full inheritance of $50 million, securing her position as one of the wealthiest women in the world. That same year, she entered into her first marriage. Her groom was Alexis Mindavani, a Georgian prince whose family had fled the Soviet invasion and settled in Paris, acquiring a reputation in high society for marrying into money. The wedding took place in Paris, drawing thousands of onlookers to the Russian Orthodox Cathedral. The bride wore a pale gray Chanel outfit for the civil ceremony and an ivory satin gown for the church service. To mark the occasion, her father approached Cartier with an extraordinary commission, resulting in a wedding gift that set a staggering benchmark in jewelry history. He purchased a single-strand natural pearl necklace for his daughter at the eye-watering price of roughly $1 million. The strand was composed of 44 exceptionally large pearls, measuring between 8.7 and 16.3 millimeters, finished with a clasp featuring a cabochon turquoise surrounded by diamonds. The true weight of this necklace rested heavily in its provenance. These pearls had belonged to Marie Antoinette, Queen of France. Historical records trace the stones back to Anne of Austria in the 17th century, passing down through generations of French queens before reaching the ill-fated Marie Antoinette. How the necklace survived the French Revolution remains a subject of debate among historians. The queen may have entrusted the pearls to a confidant before her imprisonment. They might have been stolen during the infamous looting of the Garde Meuble in 1792, or perhaps they remained intact until the French Republic auctioned the crown jewels in 1887. Barbara wore the pearls of a monarch who lost her life on the scaffold, a detail that lends a quiet, tragic weight to the jewel, considering the personal misfortunes that would soon follow the bride. Barbara treated even the most historically significant pieces with a striking lack of reverence, regularly adapting them to her own whims. The Cartier archives note that she had the pearls restrung and altered in length multiple times throughout her life. The society hostess Elsa Maxwell once visited Barbara and noticed the famous necklace was missing. When she asked after it, Barbara smiled and replied casually that the goose had them. Astonished, Maxwell asked for an explanation. Barbara calmly relayed that Mr. Cartier had advised her that if a goose swallowed the pearls, the stones would pass through the bird's digestive tract and emerge with a significantly brighter luster. The pearls were accompanied by a second, equally magnificent wedding present from her father. He gifted her a Cartier necklace composed of 27 perfectly matched, highly translucent jadeite beads of a vivid emerald green. To fashion a matching strand of this quality, every bead must be carved from a single boulder, a process resulting in immense wastage. While top-quality jadeite beads rarely exceed 10 millimeters, the beads on Barbara's necklace were gigantic, ranging from 15.4 to 19.2 millimeters. Their supreme quality has led experts to believe they originated directly from the Qing imperial court in the late 19th century. Originally, this jadeite strand featured a Navette-cut diamond clasp. Barbara, demonstrating her hands-on approach to her collection, promptly sent it back to Cartier in 1934 to have the clasp entirely redesigned. She commissioned a new geometric Art Deco closure in yellow gold, set with calibre-cut rubies and baguette diamonds. The striking contrast of the red rubies against the luminous green jadeite perfectly captured her developing preference for bold, exotic color palettes and her desire to stamp her own identity on her possessions. While her jewelry collection was expanding with flawless masterpieces, her new marriage was fracturing immediately. On their wedding night, Prince Alexis refused to sleep with her, bluntly informing his bride that she was too fat. It is difficult to comprehend how a young woman possessing vast wealth and the striking looks of a film star accepted this kind of treatment. Yet, this pattern of marrying men who ultimately diminished her was only just beginning. The cruel remark triggered a lifelong, severe battle with anorexia, a condition she would later use to control her weight to the point of extreme frailty. The union lasted barely 2 years. During that brief time, Alexis spent millions of her dollars on polo ponies, lavish properties, and bespoke men's jewelry. When they divorced in 1935, Barbara's primary complaint was simply that he did not appreciate her. Alexis walked away with a massive alimony settlement of $1 million and a fleet of luxury vehicles, publicly congratulating himself on his newfound independent wealth. His triumph was remarkably short-lived. Just 3 months after the divorce was finalized, he was driving a Rolls-Royce, one of the parting gifts funded by Barbara, at 85 miles per hour along a winding road in the foothills of the Pyrenees. The car struck a culvert and plunged into a deep gully, killing the prince instantly. Only 1 day after finalizing her divorce from Alexis Memdovani in 1935, Barbara married Count Kurt Haugwitz Reventlow. This union brought her only child, Lance, into the world, but the household quickly descended into a highly controlling and hostile environment. The Count pressured Barbara into renouncing her American citizenship to avoid taxes, gaining immense legal leverage over her and their son. The relationship was marked by severe verbal and physical abuse, eventually leaving Barbara hospitalized and her husband temporarily jailed. She fought a protracted legal battle in London to secure a restraining order, regain her citizenship, and finalize their divorce in 1938, inevitably paying out another multi-million-dollar settlement. During these suffocating years, her jewelry commissions showed a remarkable architectural strength. In 1935, she acquired a platinum and diamond Udio bracelet from Van Cleef & Arpels. Introduced just a year earlier, the Udio design drew its inspiration directly from the links and closures of a man's belt. Its flexible, brickwork-like construction gave it a silky, serpentine movement on the wrist. Her pursuit of historic gems soon led her to one of the most significant royal collections of the 20th century. In 1936, Barbara acquired a suite of Romanov emeralds that had once belonged to Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia. When the Grand Duchess fled St. Petersburg following the 1917 revolution, her jewels were left behind in a hidden safe at the Vladimir Palace. They remained there until her son, Grand Duke Boris, and a friend disguised themselves as workmen and smuggled the pieces out of Russia in a pair of Gladstone bags. The collection included a massive 100-carat hexagonal-cut emerald and an extraordinary 107-carat step-cut emerald that traced its lineage directly back to Catherine the Great. Following the Grand Duchess's death, the emeralds were sold to Cartier in 1927, briefly owned by the American heiress Edith Rockefeller McCormick, and then returned to the jewelry house. Barbara was more than willing to pay double the asking price to secure the stones, with reports noting the transaction exceeded $1 million. The purchase was considered so valuable that Cartier divided the jewels into 10 packets and shipped them across the Atlantic, hidden in a tea shipment on 2 separate steamships, keeping the 100-carat hexagonal stone completely isolated on the second vessel. She initially had Cartier set the stones into a heavy 1930s-style sautoir, wearing the massive emeralds alongside a matching ring and earrings. For now, she wears them simply as heavy pendants, but she will soon commission a highly unusual, entirely different setting for these stones. That specific transformation becomes a focal point of her collection later on. This appetite for monumental royal gems often overshadows a quieter, distinctly human side to her collecting habits. In early 1935, before her marriage to the Count, Barbara traveled to Egypt to recover her health, staying at a hotel near the pyramids of Giza. She was accompanied by her Swedish physiotherapist, Karin Gustafsson, whom she affectionately called Miss Gus. During this trip, Barbara presented her employee with an exceptional piece of Art Deco design, a Cartier ring carved entirely from a single piece of rock crystal. The transparent quartz was topped with a star-shaped platinum mount, set with transitional and single-cut white diamonds. In a letter sent back to her family in Sweden, Gustafsson recounted the exact words Barbara used when handing over the jewel. She told her physiotherapist that she had so much she could not wear it all, adding simply that she liked her. This spontaneous gesture reveals a great deal about her daily reality. She frequently tried to secure a bit of simple human connection, handing out her meticulously curated treasures to the people employed to care for her. She would eventually find a brief period of calm in 1942 when she married the Hollywood actor Cary Grant. Grant was independently wealthy and married her out of a genuine desire to care for her, famously becoming the only husband who never asked for alimony. They lived a relatively quiet life together, hosting small dinners away from the glaring society press. Grant sincerely tried to provide stability and shield her from the individuals who constantly exploited her wealth. But the steady presence of a Hollywood star could not entirely mend the deep fractures from her past. Following her divorce from Grant, the pace of her marriages accelerated, each proving more disastrous and expensive than the last. She married her fourth husband, Prince Igor Trubetskoy, a union that ended with him abandoning her in Paris and unsuccessfully demanding $3 million in alimony. Her fifth marriage, to the Dominican diplomat Porfirio Rubirosa in 1953, lasted a mere 53 days, but cost her a staggering $2.5 million settlement following his very public affairs. A sixth marriage to the German tennis star Baron Gottfried von Kram also quickly dissolved. As her personal life became a revolving door of brief, highly publicized, and deeply expensive unions, her approach to collecting shifted. She began commissioning pieces that were bolder, relying on her own authority rather than historical tradition. The clearest example of this audacity is the Pasha of Egypt diamond. This exceptional, colorless stone is considered one of the most important diamonds associated with the Egyptian royal collection, though gemologists still debate whether its rough origins trace back to the mines of India or Brazil. The diamond survived the fall of both the Ottoman and Egyptian empires, passing through the hands of various European jewelers and collectors. By the 1940s, Barbara acquired the stone, with several accounts suggesting she obtained it directly through King Farouk of Egypt, although the precise details of that transaction remain unverified. When the diamond entered her collection, it was an octagonal step-cut stone weighing approximately 40 carats. Most collectors would consider preserving the original cut of a named, historic diamond a fundamental responsibility. Barbara took a decidedly different approach. She disliked the octagonal shape and wanted to imprint her own aesthetic onto the jewel. She commissioned Cartier to recut the ancient stone into a round brilliant, transforming its silhouette to achieve a more modern, high-sparkle presence. Sacrificing roughly 4 carats of a flawless, historic diamond purely for an aesthetic preference is a remarkable decision. For Barbara Hutton, historical authority held no weight when it came to her personal style. She had the newly faceted 36-carat diamonds set into a ring, which she wore frequently, perhaps most famously in a series of dramatic portraits captured by the photographer Cecil Beaton. Alongside these heavy, imposing diamonds, she curated an array of whimsical, highly intricate creations that highlighted the technical mastery of the Parisian jewelry houses. In 1941, she purchased a winged fairy clip from Van Cleef and Arpels. Fashioned in platinum, the romantic figurine featured a full skirt adorned with rubies and emeralds. The delicate wings were set with brilliant cut diamonds, mounted in a way that allowed them to shimmer with the wearer's movement. These fairy clips were introduced in the late 1930s and often served as small, wearable symbols of optimism during the turbulent years of the Second World War. She continued to rely on Van Cleef and Arpels for pieces that required clever engineering. In 1951, she purchased a striking 3-strand cultured pearl bracelet. The piece featured a large diamond heart element weighing 12.73 carats. Barbara utilized the house's transformable design techniques, ensuring that the diamond heart functioned originally as a separate clip before being adapted into the primary clasp for the pearls. By the late 1950s, her commissions grew bolder, aligning with the highly graphic animal motifs pioneered by Jean Toussaint, Cartier's director of haute joaillerie. Barbara acquired 3 of the finest examples from Cartier's Great Cat Menagerie. In 1957, she commissioned an articulated tiger clip brooch. The piece was intricately set with yellow and white diamonds, utilizing carved onyx to create the tiger stripes and vibrant emeralds for the eyes. She followed this acquisition with a matching pair of tiger ear clips in 1961 and a tiger bracelet in 1962. These exotic, draped feline jewels became an essential part of her personal visual identity, draped over her shoulder or pinned to her lapel during her extensive travels. If you observe contemporary high society events, you might have noticed this specific Cartier tiger brooch making a rare public appearance. Sir Elton John, known for his own extravagant jewelry collection, recently wore the yellow diamond tiger as a guest of honor at a Burberry runway show in London. Returning to the Romanov emerald she had acquired years earlier, Barbara eventually decided their heavy, pre-war setting required a complete reinvention. In 1947, she commissioned Cartier designer Lucien Lechassagne to transform the historical stones into a Mughal-inspired emerald and diamond tiara. She deliberately chose a yellow-gold setting, a sharp departure from the platinum traditions that dominated the earlier decades of her collection. The piece was highly flexible, designed to be worn flat against the collarbone as a necklace or mounted upright as a tiara. She wore it frequently during her time in Tangier, with the large emeralds rising in a dramatic fringe above her forehead. The tiara remained intact for roughly 2 decades before she sold it to Van Cleef & Arpels in 1967. One might naturally wonder how a collector walks away from such a historically significant masterpiece, though accounts from the period suggest she liquidated the emeralds to help fund the financial settlement of yet another divorce. The jewelry house subsequently dismantled the tiara, dispersing the Romanov emeralds individually into private hands and erasing the piece as a single, unified object forever. Following the dismantling, a persistent rumor circulated in the jewelry world that several of these stones eventually found their way into the famous Bulgari emerald necklace owned by Elizabeth Taylor. As her personal life grew increasingly isolated, her jewelry acquisitions only grew in scale. During a trip to Japan in 1959, she purchased a substantial double-stranded necklace composed entirely of large, golden yellow cultured pearls. By 1967, she made her most significant single purchase from Van Cleef & Arpels, a tiara set entirely with diamonds. The central motif was anchored by a massive pear-shaped diamond weighing 54.12 carats, a stone which alone represented half the value of the entire piece. The platinum structure held a total of 187 carats of diamonds, engineered to give the illusion that the stones were floating weightlessly above her hair. As for the ultimate fate of this particular diamond tiara, several accounts indicate she later gave it to her 7th and final husband, the Prince of Champasak, when their marriage ended. The way she interacted with these monumental pieces in her later years reveals a great deal about her daily reality. In May 1968, Pierre Arpels arrived for a scheduled appointment at her suite at the Ritz in Paris. Her butler informed him that she was unwell and would receive him in her bedroom. When Arpels entered, he found Barbara resting against lace-trimmed pillows, wearing the massive 187-carat diamond tiara in bed. The jewelry designer Jean Toussaint recorded a very similar memory from an evening visit around the same period. She found Barbara resting under an embroidered pink satin coverlet, wearing the lotus ruby and diamond necklace that had been reset from her old chaumet piece decades earlier, with one sleeve of her nightgown pinned up by a large 3-diamond clasp. The visual record of these visits presents a stark reality. We see a physically frail woman confining herself to a hotel bedroom, yet still relying on hundreds of carats of diamonds and rubies as a kind of glittering armor against the outside world. This reliance on isolation deepened permanently a few years later. Lance Reventlow, her only son from her second marriage, had grown into a well-respected race car driver who famously avoided taking unnecessary risks on the track. In July 1972, he boarded a private plane in Colorado with friends. The aircraft, flown by a young, unlicensed pilot, encountered severe weather and crashed into a mountain, killing everyone on board. The loss of her only child fundamentally altered the remainder of her life. She ceased traveling to her vast estates around the world, eventually moving into a suite at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. She retreated entirely from society, living out her final years as a recluse while her physical health rapidly declined. The great ballrooms and international galas where she once debuted her historic gems were replaced by the quiet, enclosed walls of a hotel room. By the late 1970s, the vast international estates had been sold, and Barbara resided permanently at the Regent Beverly Wilshire Hotel in California. Her $42 million inheritance, once thought virtually inexhaustible, had been steadily drained by decades of costly divorce settlements, unchecked spending, and impulsive generosity to strangers. To cover her daily living expenses and mountain hotel bills, she began quietly liquidating the final pieces of her jewelry collection. She passed away in May 1979, following a heart attack. At the time of her death, reports indicated that her bank account held a mere $3,500. The contrast between her entrance into society and her exit is deeply sobering. Her funeral took place at the Woolworth Family Mausoleum in the Bronx, New York, with only 10 people attending the service. None of the titled aristocrats or Hollywood royalty she had married stood by her grave. While her personal world had shrunk to the confines of a single hotel room, the historic pieces she once owned embarked on a highly public second life. When her former jewels appear at modern auctions, they routinely shatter market expectations and draw international attention. The Marie Antoinette natural pearl necklace, the extravagant wedding gift from her father, set a world record for natural pearls when it sold at Christie's in 1999 for $1.47 million. The Hutton M. Divani jadeite bead necklace surfaced at a Sotheby's auction in Hong Kong in 2014. After 20 minutes of intense bidding, it achieved an astonishing $27.44 million. The winning buyer was the Cartier collection, bringing the imperial green beads back to the exact maison that had crafted their geometric ruby clasp 8 decades earlier. Barbara Hutton spent a lifetime acquiring both historic gems and high-profile marriages. She handed out precious stones to hotel staff and purchased aristocratic titles for her partners, a pattern of behavior that points to a profound isolation, beginning with the sudden loss of her mother at 4 years old. Her jewelry box remains one of the most important assemblages of the 20th century. Looking closely at the Cartier and Van Cleef and Arpels commissions she directed, a quiet melancholy emerges alongside the craftsmanship. These stones prove to be her most reliable companions, surviving her turbulent life without demanding alimony settlements or issuing betrayals, preserving the memory of a daring, uncompromising, and solitary collector. If this story felt as moving and fascinating to you as it did to me, please support the video with a like and subscribe to the channel to uncover more histories hidden inside royal vaults. I would love to read your thoughts in the comments regarding her collection. Which of Barbara's aesthetic decisions impressed you the most? The ruthless recutting of the Pasha diamond, or the dismantling of the Romanov emerald tiara? Thank you for watching and for spending this time with me. Until next time!